Welcome to episode 86 of Sport SA Daily Diary. Today we're chatting to one of South Africa's leading cyclists, mountain bikers, and the founder of Cycle Lab, Andrew McLean. Good afternoon, Andrew. How are you today?
Afternoon, Adam. All good, thank you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's certainly been a while, and haven't seen you on your bike as much, but I'm sure you have been actually, probably a bit on Zwift.
I was going to say, if you logged on to Zwift, you probably would have seen quite a lot of me. I have to say, I was almost a little bit derogatory of Zwift before lockdown, a bit like a computer game. I was a bit old school, we go out even when it's cold. And how wrong I was. Zwift made lockdown very, very bearable.
Yeah, it certainly did. I actually saw some pictures of, I think it was on Facebook, of your man cave where you've got your bikes and your Zwift set up. It's quite the setup, huh?
It is, and it kind of grew over the course of lockdown. So I've always had a bike room, and I tinker around in there a little bit, and set the Zwift setup up, and then decided I needed to stream it to a TV, and then I needed to do a little bit of gym work, and so I said, Ellie, out with your car and in with the gym equipment. So it's now quite a nice little training environment.
Plus all of the trophies and jerseys on the window, which we are on the walls, which we will get to. Andrew, take us back to the early days of Andrew McLean and finding a bicycle. How, when, where?
So actually it was Gary Bienecker who got me into cycling. We were studying to be teachers at JCE, and I had to do a triathlon as part of the phys ed degree I was doing. And I always ran. I was always interested in sport, and I did a lot of sport. But I really enjoyed the cycling aspect. And Gary Bienecker was at JCE, so I kind of tagged on to him, and he started taking me out for rides and introduced me really to cycling. So Gary and Mark Bienecker, and then in those days, Willie Engelbrecht, Alan van Heerden were all part of a hardcore riding group in the south, and I suppose that's where I cut my teeth.
So, I mean, that's quite a late start to your career, huh? I mean, obviously, well out of school and out of your teens, a lot of the pros are much younger starters.
Yeah, and I think sometimes maybe the beauty of starting a sport a little later is you have a little bit more longevity. I'm still as passionate about racing and epic and all these things. And maybe it is because I started a little bit later. I get a lot of parents who come into the store and say, my little Johnny is really, really talented, and I'm going to take him out of school and homeschool him, and he's going to be the next Chris Froome or Nino Schurter. And my advice is expose him to every sport. I'm sure he's going to be the next Chris Froome or Nino Schurter, but expose him to every sport, and in particular team sports. And there's plenty of time to specialize and be the next Chris Froome. And I think looking back, I played a lot of team sport, and I thoroughly enjoyed all my sport at school, and then found cycling that I was passionate about, and then I kind of was able to specialize in my cycling.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, I couldn't agree with you more. I think one of the most important things for a youngster growing up is to play team sport, because it teaches you just how to deal with people, situations with people, and that, which can be carried through into business, which I'm sure you've learned throughout your years.
Certainly have. And I mean, you've only got to think about what's happened to ourselves and kids during lockdown, taking them away from their social mates and social interaction. I think that you need that. And on top of that, I also think it taught us just the value of a good teacher, because I've got some mates who've done some homeschooling and said teachers are the most underpaid profession in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife is a teacher, and I try and stick to the bedroom and my desk as much as I can and away from those children. It's a patience given talent, that's for sure. Andrew, one fact I didn't know about you was you were born in London. When did you move over to South Africa?
No, I actually wasn't. I was born in northern Rhodesia, which in those days was Zambia. So my folks came over from the UK onto the Copper Belt, and then I was born up there, and then I suppose when I was about 6 or 7, we came down to South Africa. So I've been lucky enough to have a British passport, which was really, really valuable to me in my cycling career because, of course, most of my prime of my career was during the apartheid era. And I needed to get over to Europe and do some racing, and my British passport came in handy. And then all I did was I turned my names around, and I'm Andrew Richard McLean, and I became Richard Andrews, and that was my license, and I was able to race in Europe under that name. So that passport was very, very valuable to me.
Well, certainly. I actually wanted, when you mentioned the Bierneckers and Ellen van Heerden earlier, I wanted to chat to you about that because South Africa had an amazing abundance of talent, sort of late 80s, early 90s, that didn't really have the opportunity to expose themselves because of what was going on in the country.
Yeah, I mean, Ellen, some of them, most of them got tastes of riding there. Ellen van Heerden particularly did very, very well. In fact, won a stage in the Giro d'Italia. Willy Engelbrecht, arguably one of the most talented we've ever had, raced in Belgium. But it was always under pseudonyms. It was always under a cloud. It was always, well, we can't put you in the Tour de France team because then journalists are going to pick up, where you're from and how we're going to. So it was difficult. And, I think guys a lot more talented than me, Willy, Ellen van Heerden, Mark Biernecker, could have done really, really well in Europe, but unfortunately, due to the circumstances, just weren't able to.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys obviously had a lot of racing against each other here in South Africa. You were in quite a few teams, late 80s, early 90s, the sort of Southern Sun, Mnet, Top Sport, VW, Fox. But then you did have a year overseas in Belgium. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, it was a real eye-opener. So the bottom line really was, it unfortunately was during the drug era. I got to Belgium and I rode some fairly good races. Tour of Switzerland was a big one. But I realized at the end of the year I was a 50cc and 1000cc race, and I came home with my tail between my legs because I just couldn't compete. But it was fantastic. I learned a lot. I traveled around Europe, and I saw things I should have seen. I saw things I shouldn't have seen. But looking back, in terms of an education for life, it was unbelievable. I mean, I remember getting up at 3 a.m. and standing on the side of a highway, waiting for a team car to maybe not pick me up and take me to a race in a country I didn't know where, and I didn't know when I'd be coming home, because from that race I might go to another race or I might have to catch a trainer. It was insane, but it was a real life lesson, and looking back on it, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. Andrew, you say that you're a 50cc amongst the 1000cc's. Why do you think South Africa haven't produced more top-class cyclists? I mean, we've got the two biggest competitive cycling events in the world. Everybody in South Africa seems to be on a bike, but our numbers haven't been fantastic at the top of the tree yet.
No, and there, I mean, we could probably talk for an hour on this, but there are a few factors. One is we don't have a culture of cycling in the country, and when I say a culture, a deep hereditary culture of cycling. And to improve, you need competition, and you need it at a young age, and you need to learn. One of the biggest skills, and I'm going to kind of hone in on road riding, because that's probably, everyone watches the Tour de France. You need bunch riding skills. So what happens is, if you're really good and talented in South Africa, the bunches are so small and there's only a couple of really talented guys that you don't have to improve your bunch riding skills and your positioning in the bunch. You can sit at the back of the bunch, last man, and there goes all the strong guys I'll go with, and you'll ride right past the bunch and into the move. Now, in Europe, there are 200 people on a road, a third of the size of our roads, and all 200 are as strong as you, and all 200 know that you have to be in the top 15, 20 riders. Now, to get to the top 15, 20 riders, you have to be unbelievably strong and have an unbelievable amount of skill. And if you don't learn and perfect that skill, it doesn't matter how strong you are. If you're sitting at the back of the bunch in Europe and the brake goes off the front, you will never, ever see them again. And you need competition from an early age, and you need big bunches and small roads and technical riding. Now, a typical ride is the Argus. It's 100 Ks. In Europe, it's 200 Ks. In the Argus, there are 15 corners in the Argus. In Europe, there are 35 corners a lap, and you do 20 laps. Yeah. So it's just such a different skill set. And a few have mastered it and done really well. And there's some really strong, talented guys who have really battled in Europe. They've won hundreds of races in South Africa, but they've battled in Europe because they just don't have the skills. And I was one. So, I was really competitive and I did fairly well in South Africa, but I battled in Europe because I didn't have the strength and skill set to really, really mix it when it counted at the front of the bunch. And you don't learn that overnight. So somebody who had it and did really well would be Robbie Hunter. Robbie was a boy from the West Rand. He had big elbows, wide shoulders, and he's the only guy I've ever seen put his finger up Cipollini's nose and tell him that he better move over or he'll show him what they do on the West Rand. You've got to have a bit of that dog fight in you, and it's not easy. And I'm going to say there's been a lot of talented guys who've gone to Europe and really, really battled, because if you don't have that, it doesn't matter how strong you are. It doesn't matter how good your coach is. It doesn't matter what nutrition you take. All of that means nothing. And because our pool of talent is fairly shallow, the bunches are small, the roads are big, you don't learn those skills. And it's a real challenge. And the guys who do well normally go to Europe fairly early, and they got to work really hard and quickly to get those skills. Otherwise, you just can't compete.
And is there not an opportunity to change it so that they can compete? I mean, I know obviously our roads is our roads, but is there not a way that somehow Cycling South Africa can put together races that enables these guys to be able to compete?
We've got 2 hours now. No, so you can. So what you need to do is do things like criterium racing, short course, lots of corners, tight bunches. But the fact remains is you need 200 really strong guys. It's all very well being on Zwift and putting out power numbers, but that's a good example. The guys who win on Zwift are not necessarily the guys who win in the real world. And one of the challenges, and I saw an article by one of the top pros the other day, there's guys in the bunch who push out unbelievable numbers, but they never get close to winning a race because they don't have the skill set, the technique, the bunch skills to win. But on Zwift nullifies that. So your bunch position and your skills are nullified, and it's just power to weight ratio. And suddenly different guys are starting to win because it's taken out those two very critical parts of cycling. And to get it right in South Africa, what we would need is 200 riders, small road, and lots of strong riders. Now, in my opinion, you can kind of get it right for ladies, because what you can do is you can put the ladies into the vets A bunch, the 30s, which have 40, 50, 60 strong vets. And those vets at 30 odd are probably about as strong, maybe not quite, but about as strong as the strongest ladies in the world. Now you're riding with 60 strong men who have not giving the ladies an inch. And in fact, in cycling terminology, don't want to be chicked by the ladies. So they certainly don't want to let them beat them. And those ladies are racing at a level much higher. Now, that doesn't suit all ladies, but ones like Ashley Moman-Passio, she embraced that and wanted to race with the men because she knew the men were stronger, more physical, and that helped her to prepare for her European. And now we know how well she's done and what she's gone on to do in Europe. But not everybody wants to do that.
Yeah. Andrew, let's go back to you. You had a great 3 years between 92 and 94, where you won the Giro del Capo 3 times in a row. Again, you obviously won in 96. You've won numerous August Cape Town Cycle Tours, 94.7s. You got your South African colours in 1998. What was the highlight for you in those early days of cycling?
Sure. It would be hard to single out any one. I mean, the Giro del Capos were good. I think, you know, the beauty of cycling is it really is a team sport. And to win on the road, or even the epic for that matter, because it's also a team sport, you know, it's a lot about your team, your mates, the camaraderie. And I was lucky enough to be in some really strong teams. You know, I had guys like the Bianca brothers, Willie, Ellen van Heerden as partners. I learned from them, and I could climb fairly well, so I could get a jersey. And then I had really strong teammates to look after me. And again, because there weren't 30 good strong teams in the country, there were only 3 or 4 ever. You know, it was a lot easier to win. So having said that, though, the style of racing in South Africa probably didn't really suit me, because most races were 100 Ks, fairly flat. It was a fun ride, and it ended up in a sprint. And I was a useless sprinter. And I could work fairly nicely for some of my teammates who could sprint, Willie and Alan van Heerden. And that's what I did. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think for me, some of my best memories of victories would come off-road, actually, not on-road, because it wasn't my skill set. I took it up late in life. I had to learn a lot. You know, I couldn't ride a bicycle off-road. I realized how poor my skills were off-road, and I had to really work at it. And you know, the beauty of off-road is it's, I think, one of the few sports in the world where you get to test yourself against the best in the world. So in other words, when you line up at the Absa Cape Epic and the Sousa and Schurter on the line, on the same day, on the same course, in the same conditions, you can get to the finish and say, oh, I only lost 20 minutes. You know, you can gauge your effort. Now, in golf, maybe you can tee off the day after, but you can't say, all right, Tiger, it's your shot. Okay, now it's me. There's almost no sport where you really compete in the same conditions on the same day. Everything's level. And so the epic for me became really a great challenge. One is because I didn't have the skills, and 2 is it's really an endurance event, which I was quite good at, a longer endurance type event. And there's a lot of climbing, a lot of the who does well and who doesn't gets decided on the big climbs, on the power to weight ratio. And there I was fairly strong, being a smaller guy and a fairly thin guy. So it suited me, and it was a challenge that I certainly enjoyed. And I've ridden with some great partners and had some wins. And if I look back on my career, I have probably some of the fondest memories of the Absa Cape Epic, although my first love was always the road.
Yeah. Well, I think you're being slightly modest there. You say you've had some wins. You've had 25 Absa Cape Epic stage wins and 3 overall wins in category. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal for somebody that took up the sport very late and, as you say, couldn't really do it.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I've had some great partners, and so one comes to mind immediately. I rode with a guy called Heinz Zordweg, and so I was looking for a good partner. I really wanted to win another Absa Cape Epic, and someone said to me, "This Austrian, he's a machine." So I got a hold of him and sent him a WhatsApp, and I got a WhatsApp back, and to and fro. Anyway, we decided we're riding, and he said, "I'll see you at the waterfront. I'll have a bright orange KTM top on." So I said, fine. Got there on time, met him, said, "Hello, Heinz. and he greeted me in German, wie geht's? And I thought, okay. And I said, how was your trip over? And he replied in German. And I realized we had a problem. So what had been happening, I was WhatsApping him. He was sending the WhatsApp to his daughter in America, who was translating it. He would send the answer, she'd translate it, and then send it back, and he'd forward it to me. So no problem. We got a Google thing, and I said, right, we need to communicate a little bit. And I learned that schnell meant let's go faster, and langsam means we got to go slower. And we did an epic basically on 2 words, and we're now the best of friends, and we visit each other at each other's houses. Needless to say, his English has improved a lot more than my German.
I mean, that's pretty phenomenal to have met somebody sort of the weekend before, or a few days before the Epic, and ride a race like that with zero communication, because it is absolutely a team sport. You know, you get left behind on a hill, you can quite easily get disqualified with the time penalty.
It is, and he was an absolute gentleman. He was a proper machine, and you know, there's an unspoken communication that happens, and after a couple of days, without even saying schnell or langsam, we both knew how we were feeling. And you know, I went on to ride a Transalp with him in the Alps in Europe, and he's become a really good mate. And it's amazing that you don't have to communicate in the conventional sense of the word. You very quickly learn to look after each other, and the underlying principle is very, very, very basic. All you've got to do is treat your partner like you'd want to be treated, and everything else is easy.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's such a partnership. Andrew, a few years ago, you were due to ride the Epic. I think the weekend before, you had a fall and you broke your collarbone. Now, I remember driving past you after you'd broke your collarbone, and you were sitting on the front of your bunch, putting your mates and your riding partners in absolute pain cave. And I could see it on their faces when I drove past. I mean, there's no words to actually say.
I was so frustrated because I knew when I crashed that I broke it, and that was the end of my Epic. And I suppose there's a bit of adrenaline because I had quite a hard crash, and I knew that was it. All those months of training, everything was over. And so I said, well, then they wanted to get a car to fetch me, and I said, I'm not getting a car. I can manage to get back to the lab, and off I went. Yeah, and they remind me of that.
Yeah, how they had to hang on. And Andrew, I mean, I've seen you race on the road as well. You've raced with the elites quite a bit, and you've actually given them a good cup. How do they feel when the older guy comes and joins them and leaves them in his dust?
I don't know about leaving them in their dust. Certainly not the top pros anymore, that's for sure. But the beauty of road cycling is that experience counts for a lot, like we were speaking about a bit earlier. So positioning, knowing when to be at the front, knowing when the road will change and the wind will come from the side, all of that is so valuable. So often using my years of experience, I get a slightly better result than I actually should, because the youngsters still make the odd mistake, and I can capitalize on it. But I'm certainly not hurting too many pros anymore, I can assure you that.
I'm sure there are a few. Andrew, off the bike, you've also done incredibly well. You started Cycle Lab. What has made Cycle Lab what it is today? Because there's a lot of other cycle shops / cycle clubs, but they've never come close to the size of Cycle Lab. I mean, it's grown huge. What made it huge, and how did you get it to that point?
By failing a lot, believe it or not. Kind of someone asked me the other day about studying, and I said, I've done an MBA, and I've done an MBA by experience because I've made a lot of mistakes. I think the underlying philosophy for me has always been that I believe that bicycles change people's lives. And if you are passionate and you work hard enough for long enough at anything, and you're really consistent at it, you will succeed. And I often joke and say I haven't worked a day in my life yet because I was a pro cyclist, which I love doing. And then I started Cycle Lab, and that's my passion. So I'm yet to work, and I've been lucky enough to be paid, and I've been lucky enough to have some really, really good partners along the way and mentors who've advised me, helped me. And as I say, I've failed. And what I've tried to do is not fail twice at the same thing. So I've tried to learn from my mistakes. And as I say, I've made some mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes. But everyone, I think, was a learning opportunity to get better and to build an ecosystem. So if I sell you a bike and you walk out the door and that's the end of and I wave you goodbye and say, Adam, I hope you enjoy your new bike that you bought from us. Thank you for buying it. Goodbye and good luck. Then I'm out of business and I did a really poor job. I think it's all about the ecosystem. It's all about getting you to ride with us, getting you to ride more often, rewarding you for shopping with us, using tech where possible to enable that, when you buy a bottle of chain lube online, sending you a video on how to lube your chain, on finding ways to add value rather than just try and make a one-off sale and then move on to the next person. And, have I got it right? Most of the time, probably not. But I certainly strive to learn from every experience and build an ecosystem. Have a club for you to join, have a free talk in the evening about how to fix a puncture, have talks on nutrition, give you a free skills lesson at a bike park. Because if you buy a bike from us, go on your first ride, grab the front brake, go over the bars and say, oh, this is a terrible sport, and hang your bike in the garage, I don't have a customer. So we've got to find ways to add value. And what COVID has done is absolutely phenomenally got people to realize the value of health. And I think the new wealth will be your health. And suddenly we're seeing bikes coming out of garages, people buying bikes, people exercising across the board and cycling across the world. And because in the big cities around the world, people don't want to get on tubes and in buses, they're using bikes to commute all over the place. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but certainly worldwide, cycling has to be at an all-time high, despite the 2 months or so of lockdown that we've had.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I rode through Santon with a couple of mates last week, and it was so peaceful and quiet. There were no cars, and we said, "Jeepers, if only it could always be like this, with people riding to work and people actually being the benefits from riding to it. Companies give you a benefit. They build showers for you, but you get, I don't know, discounts from partners or whatever if you ride to work, etc., etc." It would be a great concept if we could get it off the ground.
It certainly would. And, we're very much an event-driven nation. And because we don't have this huge commuter part, when someone from Europe comes into one of our stores, they say, wow, first of all, we can't believe you can have such big stores at the end of Africa. And two is they say, but where's your commuter bikes? This represents 10% of the market. Where's the other 90? And we say, no, this is our market. We have more gondolas of nutrition in one store than they have in, close to 100 stores, because our customers are doing events and consuming nutrition. And that doesn't mean they all want to win. They might have a bet with a mate or to finish their first 20K ride. It doesn't matter. But we are a very event-driven nation. And imagine if we could put commuting into the mix. I mean, it would be phenomenal. And I see a little bit of more commuter happening. I see Alan Windy and them in Cape Town are doing some really good work, and I can see it working there. But not having that culture of cycling. A guy will, or a girl for that matter, will park their car in the bike lane. Now in Europe, there's almost no chance of that happening, because the person driving the car has a family member who's riding a bike in a bike lane. So they have an empathy for it. In South Africa, someone will park in the bike lane, and without even realizing what they've done, it's just a different culture, and it'll take a long time to change. But the bicycle certainly, in terms of where the world is at the moment and COVID and climate change and everything that's happening, the bicycle has to be the ideal tool to solve half of our issues.
Well, let's hope it does. And now with obviously the e-bikes coming out, there's actually no excuse for people to not ride. Andrew, just in closing, I mean, as you mentioned, we could talk all afternoon about bikes and epics and that sort of thing. What's next for Andrew on the bike? I mean, you've achieved pretty much everything. Do you still have things that you want to achieve and sort of goals you set for yourself?
Well, at the moment would just be to get on a start line. I'd love to take all this fitness from Zwift and unleash it somewhere. My mates who I ride with on the weekends, I think, are starting to get sick and tired of me racing them up and down every single hill. But, you know, the beauty of cycling, again, is that you can enjoy it to a very, very ripe old age. And, you know, I see myself riding my bike, whether I'm racing and possibly even on an e-bike, because as you mentioned, the e-bike is the next big revolution that's come. In fact, it's coming fast. I think this last weekend, our four-way store sold 8 or 9 e-bikes. That revolution is coming. So I might well be on an e-bike, but just thoroughly enjoying the sport of cycling for what it offers. And, you know, I don't see myself not riding a bike. It's part of, it's a way of life. You know, for me, it's easier to go out, even in the middle of winter, and do 3 or 4 hours on my bike than stay in bed and rest. I'd rather be out riding. And you know, it's for me, it's absolutely wonderful, and I don't see myself stopping. And again, you know, at whatever age, I want to line up and race as hard as I can and compare myself. And I look at the data and the watts, and I love all that geek stuff as well. And you know, that's the beauty, is you can still compete.
Yeah. Well, I think if you look at Arthur Duncan, who we interviewed a few days ago, he's the perfect example. At 85, he's going for World Championships. So I'm hoping to see Andrew McLean at 85 going for World Championships too.
I'm not sure I'll be as good as Arthur, but I certainly hope to be enjoying my bike at 85. Maybe I'll be on an e-bike behind.
That's never going to happen. Never, ever. Andrew, it's been awesome chatting to you on Sport SA Daily Diary. Thank you for your time today. And good luck, and look forward to seeing you on the roads again soon.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Cheers. Don't miss tomorrow's episode of Sport SA Daily Diary, where we'll be chatting to a 4th Dan black belt in karate, who will be heading to the 2021 Olympics.